What's going on, guys? I'm TieFly85.
And I'm T-Rec87, and today we wanted to bring to you our review of South Park: The Fractured Butthole. Let's get started.
I'm going down to South Park, gonna have myself a time.
Friendly faces everywhere.
To kick off this review of South Park, the first thing we wanted to talk about with you guys is basically just that the story of this game and how basically an episode of South Park translates into a game. And you know, there are times where I feel like that works really well, and there are also times though where it doesn't translate very well. And what I mean by that is that I think that the humor sometimes falls a little flat, and South Park is a very short show. It's like 20-25 minutes long, and when you try to stretch that out into like my playtime through this game was like 18 hours before I finished the game. When you try to stretch something like that out into a game, it can kind of get repetitious and it can kind of get dull. I mean, don't get me wrong, South Park is a great series and there's a lot of like zany, crazy stuff that happens. But I feel like sometimes like the plot was just dragging on too long, and there are issues with making a game out of a TV show like this. I don't know. How do you feel about that, Typefly?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. It is interesting to see how they can pull off, like what you said was a 25-minute show into what could be, like you said, you played 18 hours of this game. So to pull off a 30-minute show into 18 hours of gameplay, I mean, you know, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, I would say overall did a really good job. With like, you know, voicing the characters and the gameplay overall. Like, I did really enjoy it. But yeah, like you said, I mean, there were some parts that did fall flat, and there definitely was a lot of toilet humor in this game. And I know that's what that's what South Park is. So, I mean, it definitely, they didn't shy away from it at all.
No, but I mean, and here's the thing about the toilet humor though, is I feel like toilet humor is good for about 25 minutes. But when you get into like 20 hours of toilet humor, when you get towards the end and the game's still talking about like still making fart jokes, and stuff like that, like I get towards the end of the game, I'm just like, oh my god, stop, you know, like I get it, it's about someone's fractured butthole and there's a lot of fart jokes, and I get it, you know, you don't need to hammer that into me. What I can say about this personally is that I feel that they were very true to South Park. You know, it is definitely, it makes you feel like it's a big, long, extended version of a South Park show, but at the same time, does that translate always well into a video game? I don't think so. And that's unfortunate because I love South Park. Actually, it's funny because when I was a kid, I hated South Park. I thought it was like the grossest show on television. And as I got older and I go back and I'd start watching it, I got that there were actually there was a lot of real wit behind what they're doing. They make a lot of great social commentary, and they try to bring issues to light in a funny way. They do a really good job, and it's a show that like I wish I would have watched more as a kid, because as an adult now I do like it a lot.
Yeah, they definitely did a really good job of bringing a lot of... So if, I mean, obviously Tarek said he didn't watch it as a kid, but for any of you who did watch it from the very beginning to now, a lot of those little, like, jokes and different things that they pull off, I mean, were stuff from the show, so it kind of gave you that little bit of, it kind of took you into the game, you know, because you've watched it for so long and you see all these little jokes and characters. But I really loved the aspect of Coon and Friends. I really enjoyed Coon and Friends overall, like especially when that came to South Park in the series, and then for them to make like a specific game designed around these characters, like especially like Cartman as, you know, as the raccoon Claude Coon, and then you had freaking you know, there was Fast Pass as Jimmy,
Kenny,
Super Craig.
Kenny was Mysterion, which was actually my favorite character, just because you could never hear Kenny in the cartoon. And okay, so and this is another thing is I haven't kept up with the continuity of South Park really, and so like I know a lot about quite a bit about South Park, but some of the stuff, like, you know, obviously Mysterion has been featured in the show, and it took me a long time to actually realize that was Kenny, because, you know, as far as I knew, Kenny doesn't talk. You know, he's always got the muffled voice, you know, because his jacket's always over his mouth, and now when it was switched, when his, you know, the top of his head's covered, he's got like this super deep voice, and it's kind of like Batman-esque. It took me a really long time to figure out that reference. The crab people that appear in the game at one point, I totally, that was completely over my head. So this is a game that like is made for people who love South Park. Like absolutely, like, if you don't really watch South Park, you're not going to get this game. You're not going to understand like all the different references there are in this game. to all the different characters, because there was a lot that I feel like went over my head.
Yeah, no, they definitely did a good job of throwing in nods there to the, basically people who've been watching it for a really long time. But even for people who were just picking it up, like, it still was funny. Like, there still was those funny, the toilet humor moments. Like, one of the things that I thought was really interesting, and not to give anything away, but, like, where you had to use the bathroom, and they made it into, like, this really funny game. Yeah, but you had to go to, like, everybody's house and use everybody's toilet, and it was just, like, you could use porta potties and restaurant bathrooms, but they just made it into this, like, funny little side quest of where you're basically trying to take a dump, like, everywhere in town.
Did you happen to notice that different toilets had different difficulty settings? Like, depending on the toilet that you were at. And that was kind of like a fun little mini game for the game. I mean, it didn't really do anything for you, except fill that net meter for your character that would help him level up. Like, if you did enough toilets, you'd reach the next rank of, like, the toilets, and then you'd get some experience for it. There's fun little diversions in the game to do that. Unfortunately, I hated the Instagram feature, the Coonstagram. Where you have to go around and you basically take selfies with, like, every character in South Park. And it does make you, I mean, it gives you something to do, I guess, where, some characters won't take a selfie with you right away unless you do something for them or you don't have enough followers. But this is a feature that they kind of had in the last game, basically by trying to get people to, like, follow you on Facebook, more or less. And so I didn't feel like I felt like it had just been done before, and so I was a little bit disappointed with that feature, and it wasn't very fun to me. So let's move into, like, the gameplay itself, though, a little bit. I did enjoy the combat a lot, personally. So in the last game, it was a lot like this game, except it was just more of a basic, RPG. Think more along the lines of, like, Final Fantasy VII, where this game, you have an actual grid that your characters have different attacks that they, some attacks will do, like, across the entire grid in a line, some will do, like, an area of effect damage, some will do just in front of you. And so it added more variety to the combat and made it deeper. It was more like Final Fantasy Tactics almost, for any of you that have played that game. And so I felt, because I played Stick of Truth, and I felt this was a good evolution of the combat system. And I love that there were so many different classes to choose from and powers to pick from, and there were a lot of characters to choose from. There was, I think 12 different heroes that you could have. You could only have 4 at a time in your party, but you could swap them out and choose different ones. And so the combat system itself was expanded on, I think. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, as far as it goes for the gameplay, as far as the combat, I'm not gonna lie, I did not like it at all. I am so beyond, like, the old school, like, don't get me wrong, I love Final Fantasy. It's probably hands down one of my favorite franchises of all time. But when you go back and you play Final Fantasy, like, 1 and 2 and Tactics and all of those, and the way that it was set up, like, I just love how they advanced from the turn-based into more of, like, an open type style fighting. And it just, I liked that aspect of it more, and so to have it when it was the squares, and, like, when it first popped up in the game, and you had the squares, and then you had to, like, choose which thing you wanted to do, like, it's not that it was confusing to me, it just kind of, like, slow. Took me out of, I didn't like it.
It was slow. I feel like that's probably what you hated about it. It is slower. And so I know for just, I know you enjoy a game like, say, like Final Fantasy 13. Which moved more into the realm of, it was like an active combat system, and that's more of like a Western RPG kind of trope, where, like, it's more real-time combat, where you still, like, have like a real-time combat system, versus more of a traditional, like, Japanese RPG, which is more turn-based and is more it's a slower paced type thing. And so I feel like that's probably where you're getting that from, and I can totally see that, because I do enjoy, like, the Western style RPGs a little bit more, I think. But I personally, I grew up on games like that had, like, grids, and you got to move around, like Final Fantasy Tactics or Shining Force. Those were always my favorite games as kids, because I loved trying to plan out what I was going to do. And so for somebody like me, if you like being able to plan your plan of attack, basically, the game is for you. But if you're somebody like Tyfly, who likes more of a real-time combat, something faster paced that kind of moves along, this may not be as fun for you.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I definitely enjoyed the game. It was fun for what it was. If you love South Park games, you're gonna like the game. But yeah, it wasn't. I would just say it definitely wasn't one for me.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. I can see why it wasn't something you would enjoy. The one I will say about this game, and this is a little bit contradictory to itself, is that on the one hand I gripe that the game was 20 hours and it felt slow, because it did. It felt really slow. Like sometimes I was like sitting in my chair playing, and I was like I didn't notice this until I'd been doing this for like a half hour, but I was completely like slouched in my chair because I was so bored, and I was just kind of like slogging through the game at some points, and I was completely disengaged. And I don't normally do that when I'm playing a game. Usually I'm pretty like up, I'm leaning forward, I'm into the game. But I noticed like my posture was completely like lazy when I was playing. There are those parts that are super slow. I hate that it felt slow for a 20-hour game, but at the same time, if for a big game like this, an RPG, I felt that the game should have somehow been longer. But I know those are contradictory statements, and I don't know how to fix that issue. Where I feel like if you were to go out and buy this game for $60, I would feel ripped off for a 20-hour game. There should have been more in the way of actual side quests, I guess, like a whole other, kind of storylines you could have gone through. I mean, there were like NPCs that gave you something to do. Like, oh, I need you to go do this for me, and you go to the other area of town, and you do the one thing, and then you come back. But they were really simple and short side quests, but there should have been like side story arcs, I think. They could have really expanded on this game and fleshed out this game.
I would say the one saving grace of this game, because it was a lot of repetitiveness of running back and forth and back and forth, is the the fast travel.
Yeah.
Like them adding the fast travel into the game with Jimmy as being fast pass. It just like that part of it. Like I really enjoyed that, and I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed the fast travel. I feel like if they wouldn't have had that in the game, like it definitely would have just would have drug on even longer. Like
oh yeah, I mean walking through town isn't all that fun, and I think the developers probably understood that because that was in Stick of Truth as well. There was a fast travel system, and it was actually the same character. But I think I can't remember exactly what it was, if he had like a chariot or how he got you around so fast, but it was basically the same thing. And so this game does definitely copy some elements from the old game, but it definitely expands and builds a better base. There's actually a joke in the game at one point where it's a self-aware joke where they make a joke about how they basically didn't have as much time to create this game, except the kids are talking about the superheroes game that they're playing. But they make this like self-aware joke. They're like, we didn't have as much time on this. And I think it was the developers, and probably the creators of South Park saying like, yeah, we didn't have as much time to make this game as we did the last game. So I enjoyed that they threw that in there, and it was kind of an admission of like, yeah, there are some things that are kind of, not great, but hey, we didn't have as much time. So I thought that was good that they put that in there.
another really thing that I loved about this game, like in the game, was the televisions. When you would turn the television on and it would be playing a show from within South Park, whether it be like Terrence and Phillip, or you're watching like a commercial from like Cartman or something. Mm-hmm. Like I just loved, like, you could literally stand there in front of a TV and it just would re-loop all of these, but it was so funny. I think that adding little things like that into the game, I actually enjoyed that part.
Yeah, and it's you need to play Stick of Truth, because there's actually a point in Stick of Truth when you go to Canada and you meet like Terrence and Phillip and you go through Canada, but when you go into Canada, the game goes from being like how it is, like the 2D side scroller type thing, and it goes to like a top-down type of RPG, like the old school Final Fantasies, and it has like old school like Final Fantasy 3 and 4 NES Final Fantasy type music playing. And it's like this it was my favorite part of that game. It was like this super cool diversion, even though it was kind of the main part of the main story. I wish this game had more stuff like that. Like if you try to go to Canada in this game, if you go past the farm, Canada's got like a giant border wall, like huge, like it's like hundreds of feet high. And there's somebody up on top of the wall being like, "Hey, sorry guy, you can't come in here." I mean, it was funny, but I wish that they would have had more stuff like that in this game. So it was a little bit disappointing. If you had to give this game a review score or a review, what would you give the score on this game?
Well, based on our review system for scoring, I would definitely say that the game right now is $40. So if you wanted to go out and buy this game brand new, I just went and looked at it, it's $40. Based on that particular price, with how much I enjoyed the game, I would definitely say it's worth Redboxing.
Yeah.
You should Redbox this game.
No, I actually agree with you, and it's funny because the price must have dropped recently, because when I was looking at it the other day, it still is $60. some places, which is kind of surprising because it dropped for the holidays, like all the way down to 30. I think that personally, with the amount of time that you got in this game, I personally clocked in like 18 hours to finish the campaign, and I had finished most of the side quests in the world. There was literally only a couple things that I hadn't done. Like I did the Morgan Freeman fight, but there was like a couple other random side quests I hadn't done. So let's say you give me like an extra 5 hours. That's 23 hours of gameplay for $40. I don't see that as being worth the value. So I mean, if you red box this for a weekend and you rent it for 3 or 4 days, you're paying $369 like $12. And you can easily finish the game. So I can't recommend buying this game, unfortunately, as much as I loved this game and I love Stick of Truth. But I wouldn't buy it if it was $20, I'd probably pick it up, even if I hadn't played it, or basically red box it. So I'm glad we do agree on that at least, and mine's for a different reason, just because I feel like there should have been more value in the game for what was there.
Alrighty, guys. Well, that's all we have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. We really do appreciate your time. If any of you disagreed or agreed with us on this game, definitely let us know down below. We'd love to hear your comments.
Remember to tune in next week, guys. We're actually going to be reviewing a little bit older game. Like I said, I've mentioned this multiple times before, but there's not much new coming out until the end of the month. So for next week, we thought we'd kind of take a trip back and review a game that's already come out previously. It's a little bit older. But we haven't done a review for it, so we figured it'd be fun. We're going to be reviewing Halo 5 Guardians. And we're going to be playing online as well, and streaming, so if you want to watch us on Mixer, you certainly can. We would love to absolutely have you guys, and Tyfly's got his Halo Reach shirt on, so he's ready. But that's it for today, guys. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and we will see you again soon.
And always remember, stay awesome.